What's up, guys? Skippy Africanus here, and welcome back to another Cartridge of the Week episode, this week featuring, due to viewer request, the 10mm auto. Now, first off, we will do what we always do and take a look at the head stamp, which on the top reads Hornady for the manufacturer, and on the bottom reads the caliber 10mm auto. Now, with this particular cartridge, I'm assuming this one is the Hornady 180 grain XTP loading. However, I did pick this one up at a range. I just saw it laying on the ground and picked it up, so it could very well also be a hand load, so not 100% certain on if it's that 180 grain XTP, though that being said, it does look very similar to it, so I'm going to assume that it is. So now this cartridge has gained quite some steam in the recent decade, with many new handguns and PCCs coming out to chamber this quite potent cartridge. However, it did have quite a few hurdles in its early days. That very well could have pushed this very potent cartridge into obscurity. Now, the cartridge was developed by Jeff Cooper, a very well-known pistol shooter, and further refined with a more potent loading by FFV Norma AB, and was specifically designed at the request of Dornhouse and Dixon Enterprises Inc. for their Bren 10 pistol, and at the get-go it would have, as mentioned, quite a rocky start, due primarily to the poor performance from the Bren 10. In fact, it should be noted that things got so bad for the Bren 10s that it wasn't too uncommon for them to be shipped to dealers without any magazines. Add to that, the Bren 10 was at the time the only firearm chambered for this round, and the relatively high price of $500 for the pistol itself was already going to give it a smaller market to begin with. This would, of course, result in the company producing the Bren 10s, which, remember, are the only pistols at the time chambered for this round to go bankrupt in 1986. However, in 1987, Colt would introduce their 1911 chambered in 10mm, the so-called Delta Elite, which would breathe life once again into this cartridge. And a few years later, in 1989, the FBI would formally adopt the round. However, just as the 10mm was really picking up steam, the FBI would then drop the caliber in favor of the 40 shortened week. Okay, I'm sorry, 40 Smith & Wesson fans. That's a pretty good round. It's got some potent loadings. I just heard someone call it that once, and I think the name's funny, so I routinely use it. Please don't harass me in the comments. Anyways, that being said, the 10mm wouldn't be as dead in the water as it previously was, since now there were at least firearms chambered for the cartridge, and not only were they chambered for it, but they also worked, and were much more available than the original Bren 10s. Now, fast forward to almost about a decade ago, in 2015, and traction for the cartridge really began to pick up steam, with plenty of pistols and rifles being chambered for the round. And not only is it quite successful in the civilian market, but plenty of law enforcement agencies do field the caliber, one interesting one being the Denmark Serious Dog Sled Patrol, which carries the 10mm chambered Glock 20, specifically as a last line of defense against polar bears. Now, one thing to note before we go into the specifics of this cartridge is, why did the FBI drop it in favor of the 40 Smith & Wesson? And the common simple answer is that the round's harsh recoil proved to require much more training from recruits to get used to, and that the wider grip of the pistols in this caliber tends to be a little large for those with smaller hands. And while this is somewhat true, it's also a little misleading. You see, prior to the FBI getting their hands on the Smith & Wesson Model 1006s in 1990, they had already downloaded the cartridge to be much softer shooting and a little less powerful, commonly called either the 10mm Light or the 10mm FBI. And seeing this, Smith & Wesson developed essentially a shortened version of that with their 40 Smith & Wesson to allow for a smaller grip, considering the extra case length was just being wasted. Now, with all that history out of the way, let's get into the specifics of the 10mm auto cartridge, starting with the case. You see, interestingly enough, the 10mm auto actually uses the 30 Remington auto as a parent case, to which they have simply cut the case down to 25mm. The bullet used is a .4005 diameter bullet, and loads range from as light as 135 grains all the way to 230 grains. And the velocities, of course, have quite a varied set of ranges too. However, on average, you are looking at around 1,000 to 1,300 feet per second, though, as mentioned, this is an average given there exist both pistols and rifles for this caliber, and there are plenty of loads breaching a little over 1,600 feet per second. But anyways, I think that is going to do it for this week's Cartridge of the Week episode featuring the 10mm auto. Once again, happy late birthday to my good homeboy Toad Harry Yeager on iFunny, who suggested doing the cartridge. And as always, I hope y'all enjoyed the video as much as I personally enjoyed making it, and I will see y'all next time.